The warning lights on the bridge of the UES Titan flashed red as Commander Jake Morrison stared at his screen. What should have been the green fields and silver domes of Kepler 442 colony was now nothing but smoke and fire. He had made this supply, run dozens of times before. The farming colony always welcomed them with busy landing pads and cheerful colonists eager for news from Earth. Now there was only death. "Sir, I'm not reading any life signs," said Lieutenant Ben Parker from his station. His voice was quiet and tense. "The entire settlement is gone." Jake felt his stomach turn. 50,000 people lived on Kepler 442. Families who had traveled across the galaxy to build new lives. Children who had never seen Earth but still called it home. All of them gone. "Take us down to the main settlement," Jake ordered. "Full scans. I want to know what happened here." The Titan descended through the toxic smoke that hung over what used to be New Denver. Jake could see the twisted remains of buildings through the viewports. The dome that protected the city center had been cracked open like an egg. The farms that stretched for miles in every direction were nothing but ash. Dr. Lisa Grant ran her scanners over the wreckage as they landed. She was the ship's expert on alien technology and weapons. Her face grew pale as she read the results. "Commander, these energy signatures match Vexthul plasma weapons," she said, "but the damage pattern is wrong. This wasn't a military strike. They targeted hospitals first, then schools. The residential areas were hit last." Jake's hands tightened into fists. The Vexthul were known across the galaxy as aggressive warriors, but they followed their own code of honor in battle. They fought soldiers, not civilians. This was something else entirely. "Sir, I'm picking up a weak signal from the emergency shelter near Sector 7, called out Ensign Mary Collins from communications. "It might be a survivor." They found her 3 hours later. Anna Rodriguez had been the colony's head teacher. She was trapped under debris in what used to be the elementary school, barely alive and half-mad with grief. Her legs were crushed, but she grabbed Jake's uniform with surprising strength when he tried to help her. "They came at night," she whispered. "No warning, no demands. They just started killing. The children, they hunted the children like animals. I heard them laughing." Dr. Grant gave Anna something for the pain, but the woman kept talking. Her words painted a picture of horror that made Jake's crew sick to their stomachs. The Vexthul forces had landed with overwhelming numbers. They had jammed all communications before anyone could call for help. Then they had systematically murdered every human they could find. "They had a list," Anna said, her voice breaking. "Names and faces. They knew exactly who lived here. This wasn't random. They planned this." Jake stayed with Anna until she died, 2 hours later. Her last words were about her students, children who would never grow up because aliens had decided that human life meant nothing. The crew spent the next day documenting the massacre. They found evidence of torture, families burned alive in their homes, a playground where tiny bodies had been lined up like trophies. The Vexthul had not just killed, they had enjoyed it. Jake stood in the ruins of the colony's medical center and activated his quantum communicator. The call to Earth took several minutes to connect across the vast distance of space. Admiral Kate Sullivan's face appeared on the screen. She was a tough woman who had served in the First Contact Wars 30 years ago. Jake had never seen her cry before, but tears ran down her cheeks as he transmitted the footage from Kepler 442. "How many other colonies, Jake?" she asked quietly. "How many other places like this that we just haven't found yet?" "I don't know, Admiral. But we need to send a message to the Confederacy of Worlds. The Vexthul have crossed every line that civilized beings recognize. This was genocide." Admiral Sullivan nodded. "I'm sending the files to the Galactic Council immediately. They'll have to act. Even the Vexthul's allies won't be able to ignore this." But Jake knew better. He had studied galactic politics for years. The other species feared the Vexthul Empire too much to risk war. They would offer sympathy and empty promises while human colonies burned. 3 days later, Ambassador Henry Clark returned from the emergency session of the Galactic Council with exactly the news Jake had expected. The Council had issued a formal condemnation of the attack on Kepler 442. They called it tragic and unfortunate. They promised to investigate, but they would not act. The Zephyrians abstained from the vote, Ambassador Clark reported to Earth. The Corvan Republic actually defended the Vexthal's right to defend their territorial claims. Only the Altarians supported military action, and they don't have enough ships to matter. Jake watched the transmission from his quarters aboard the Titan. Around him, his crew prepared for the long journey home. They were all thinking the same thing, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. Humanity was alone. The aliens who claimed to be their friends would not lift a finger to stop human genocide. The species that preached about galactic civilization and universal rights cared nothing for human children, burned alive by Vexthul warriors. Jake opened his personal files and began writing his report. He chose his words carefully, knowing that this document would be read by people far more important than him. But he made sure to include every detail of what they had found on Kepler 442. The galaxy needed to understand what had happened here. More importantly, Earth needed to understand that the promises of protection from their alien allies were worthless. As the Titan jumped to faster-than-light travel for the journey home, Jake looked out at the stars and wondered how many more human colonies were already ash. How many more children had died while the galactic community debated and delayed. He thought about Ana Rodriguez and her last words about the students she couldn't save. Somewhere out there, the Vexthul were probably planning their next attack on defenseless human settlements. But Jake Morrison was not the only human thinking these dark thoughts. Across Earth's colonies, messages were being sent, plans were being made, and in hidden facilities that the aliens knew nothing about, weapons were being prepared. The galaxy was about to learn what humans became when their children were murdered and their friends abandoned them. They were about to discover why Earth's allies had once insisted that humanity accept limits on their military technology. Those limits had been the chains that kept humanity civilized. Now those chains were about to come off. President Martha Hayes stood before the largest gathering of humanity in history. Every screen on every world, every station, every ship carried her image. 12 billion humans watched as their leader prepared to speak words that would change everything. Martha had been president for 6 years. She was known for her calm voice and careful diplomacy. The aliens respected her because she always followed the rules they had set for humanity. She had signed every treaty, accepted every limitation, smiled at every insult disguised as friendly advice. Today was different. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice steady but cold. "3 days ago, we learned that our children on Kepler 442 were murdered. 50,000 innocent people were slaughtered by Vexthul forces while our alien friends watched and did nothing." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle across human space. In living rooms and command centers, in mining stations and research labs, millions of people leaned forward to hear what came next. "For 30 years, we have lived under the Treaty of Rigel. We accepted limits on our weapons, our ships, our right to defend ourselves. We were told this was the price of joining galactic civilization. We were told that our allies would protect us if we gave up the tools to protect ourselves." Martha's eyes hardened. Behind her, the flag of Earth hung beside images from Kepler 442. Burned schools, dead children, families murdered in their beds. Our allies have failed us. The Galactic Council has abandoned us. Today I am declaring the Treaty of Rigel null and void. The restrictions on human military development are ended. Protocol 7 is now active. Across human space, military commanders who had been waiting for this moment began issuing orders. In hidden bases that the aliens had never been allowed to inspect, lights came on and engines started. Technologies that had been developed in secret for decades finally emerged from the shadows. Dr. Paul Rogers had spent 30 years as a ghost. Officially, he worked on agricultural research for the Colonial Development Program. In reality, he was the head of the Prometheus Research Division, humanity's most classified military project. While the aliens thought humans were building better corn plants, Paul's teams had been reverse engineering every piece of alien technology. They could steal or buy Vexthul plasma weapons, Corvan shield generators, Zephyrian faster-than-light drives. All of it had been studied, improved, and weaponized. "Show them," President Hayes had told him during their secret meeting the night before. Show them everything. Paul's presentation to the Joint Chiefs of Staff lasted 4 hours. Quantum destabilizer cannons that could crack planets. Consciousness transfer systems that made death temporary for human soldiers. Self-replicating war, machines that could build entire fleets without human oversight. General Amy Carter listened to every word without expression. She was a veteran of the border skirmishes with the hegemony 12 years earlier. Back then, she had been forced to fight with weapons that the aliens approved of, ships that were too slow, shields that were too weak, tactics that were too gentle. She would not make that mistake again. "How many ships?" she asked when Paul finished. 2,000 combat vessels, fully crewed and armed. Another 5,000. Automated units that can be deployed immediately. The shipyards in the asteroid belt can produce 50 new warships every month. Amy smiled for the first time since hearing about Kepler 442. And the crews? Every colony has a militia. Every trade ship captain knows how to fight. We've been training in secret for decades, General. We're ready. The alien ambassadors learned about Protocol 7 when human warships decloaked around their embassy stations. The ships that emerged from seemingly empty space were nothing like the peaceful exploration vessels that humanity had shown the galaxy for 30 years. These were pure instruments of war. The Zephyrian ambassador sent an immediate protest to Earth. The new human ships violated 14 different treaties and used technologies that were supposed to be banned. President Hayes's response was broadcast on every channel in the galaxy. "Ambassador, your people watched our children burn and called it politics. Your treaties mean nothing to us now." Commander Rick Turner received his orders while his ship, the UES Vengeance, patrolled the outer colonies. He was to take his squadron to the Vexthal border and establish a forward operating base. But his real mission was simpler than that. Find Vexthal military assets. Destroy them. Rick had lost friends on Kepler 442. The colony's defense coordinator, Bill Martinez, had been Rick's academy roommate. Bill's wife Sarah had sent Rick pictures of their twin daughters just 2 months ago. Now they were all dead. The Vexthal would pay for that. Dr. Rachel Moore worked in a laboratory that officially did not exist. Her research into biological weapons had been declared illegal by the Galactic Health Council 15 years ago, but humanity had kept funding her work in secret, knowing that someday they might need weapons that could target specific alien species. That day had come. Rachel's latest creation was elegant in its simplicity. A virus that attacked Vexthal nervous systems while leaving every other known species completely unharmed. It spread through the air, through water, through touch. Once released, on a Vexthal world it would kill every member of the species within days. "Are you sure about this?" asked Colonel Danny White, the military liaison to Rachel's project. "There's no way to control it once it's deployed." Rachel looked at the pictures from Kepler 442 that covered one wall of her lab. Children's faces smiled back at her. Children who would never grow up because aliens had decided their lives were worthless. "I'm sure," she said. The message went out to every human colony at the same time. It was short, simple, and absolutely clear. The age of restraint is over. Human colonies are ordered to prepare for total war. All restrictions on weapons development and deployment are lifted. Local commanders have full authority to engage hostile forces with any means necessary. The galaxy chose to let our children die. Now they will learn what that choice cost them. Captain Susan Blake received the message, while her stealth ship, the UES Shadow, monitored Vexthal fleet movements near the Rigel system. She had spent months tracking enemy ships, documenting their patrol routes and base locations. All of it had been preparation for this moment. Susan opened her targeting computer and selected the first Vexthal cruiser on her list. The aliens had no idea she was there. Their sensors couldn't detect human stealth technology that had been developed in violation of every treaty humanity had ever signed. "This is for the children," she whispered, and fired. The quantum torpedo struck the Vexthal ship and tore it apart at the molecular level. There were no survivors. There was barely any wreckage. Across the galaxy, other human commanders were making similar attacks. Vexthal ships disappeared without warning. Military bases went silent. Supply convoys never reached their destinations. The Vexthul Empire had expected humanity to protest and plead. They had expected diplomatic complaints and empty threats. They had not expected this methodical, ruthless campaign of destruction. They were learning that they had made a terrible mistake. In the ruins of Kepler 442, automated construction drones began building a monument to the dead. But this was not just a memorial. Hidden beneath the granite and steel was humanity's most powerful communications array, designed to broadcast a single message across the galaxy. The message was simple. Every alien species would hear it. Every government would understand it. You let our children die, now face the consequences. The chains were off. Humanity was free to be what it had always been capable of becoming. The galaxy was about to learn why those chains had existed in the first place. Captain Rick Turner's squadron dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vexthul system, designated Target Alpha. Intelligence reports indicated this was a minor military outpost with maybe 50,000 personnel. By galactic standards, it was barely worth noticing. By human standards, it was exactly the right size to send a message. Rick studied the tactical display from the bridge of the UES Vengeance. 3 Vexthul patrol cruisers orbited the main station. 2 more were docked for repairs. The aliens had built their base in the asteroid field thinking the rocks would provide natural cover from attack. They were wrong. All ships, weapons free, Rick ordered. No survivors, no prisoners, no mercy. The human ships opened fire with weapons that violated every treaty humanity had ever signed. Quantum disruptors tore through Vexthul shields like they were made of paper. Plasma cannons designed from stolen alien technology burned through armor that was supposed to be indestructible. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, the Vexthul base was a cloud of debris and superheated gas. Rick's ships had not taken a single hit. The enemy had barely had time to understand they were under attack before they died. Rick opened a channel to his squadron. Record everything. I want full documentation of every ship we destroyed, every life we took. Send it all to Vexthul Command. With a simple message, Kepler 442 sends its regards. The recordings reached Vexthul High Command 6 hours later. The alien generals watched in shock as their supposedly unbeatable warships were torn apart by human weapons they didn't know existed. Even worse, the attack patterns showed a level of tactical knowledge that should have been impossible. The humans had been studying them, learning their weaknesses, planning this revenge for years. Commander Susan Blake piloted her stealth ship through the wreckage of another Vexthul convoy. Her crew had been tracking this supply fleet for 3 weeks, documenting every stop, every route, every habit of the alien crews. Ghost protocol is active, she reported to Fleet Command. Target convoy has been eliminated. Tracking data uploaded to central database. Susan's ship was one of 50 that had been secretly following Vexthul forces across the galaxy. While the aliens thought they were safe in their own territory, human stealth ships had been mapping every base, every patrol route, every hidden facility. Now that intelligence was being put to use, Dr. Nathan Bell monitored the psychological warfare broadcast from his facility on Luna. His team had been studying Vexthul culture and psychology for decades. They knew exactly how to break their enemy's will to fight. The broadcast started simple. Recordings from Kepler 442. The voices of dying children calling for their parents. The sound of families screaming as Vexthul warriors burned them alive. "This is what you did to us," Nathan's voice said over the images. "This is what you chose when you murdered innocents. Now we choose our response." The messages were broadcast on every Vexthul frequency, using their own communication networks against them. Vexthul soldiers across the galaxy were forced to hear the voices of the humans they had killed, but the psychological attacks were just the beginning. Colonel Danny White stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution as his fleet approached the Vexthul colony world of Thaxmore. 3 million aliens lived on the planet below. They had built cities in the mountain valleys and farms in the lowlands. It was a peaceful world, far from any military bases. That made it perfect for Danny's mission. "Deploy the atmospheric processors," he ordered. The machines fell from human ships like silver rain. They were designed to terraform lifeless worlds, turning poisonous atmospheres into breathable air. But Danny's team had modified them for a different purpose. Within hours, the air of Thaxmore became toxic to Vex-Thul physiology. The aliens could not breathe it. They could not drink the water. They could not grow food in the contaminated soil. The planet was still habitable for other species. But for the Vex-Thul, it had become a death world. "Evacuation transports are leaving the planet," reported Lieutenant Mary Collins from her sensor station. "Should we intercept them?" Danny watched the fleeing ships on his tactical display. Millions of alien civilians running for their lives from a world their people had lived on for centuries. "Let them go," he said. "We want them to spread the word. We want every Vex-Thul in the galaxy to know what happens when they make humans their enemy." Dr. Rachel Moore's biological weapons were deployed on 7 Vex-Thul worlds simultaneously. The virus spread exactly as designed, targeting only the specific genetic markers of the enemy species. Within days, entire planets fell silent. The aliens had expected humans to follow the rules of civilized warfare. They had expected measured responses and diplomatic protests. They had not expected their enemies to deploy weapons of mass destruction. With cold, calculating efficiency, Admiral Chris Bennett received the surrender request from Vex-Thul Fleet Commander Zeth Cole 3 months after the war began. The alien general's message was desperate, offering terms for a ceasefire and negotiations. Chris deleted the message without reading it completely. The Vex-Thul had shown no mercy to human children. They would receive none in return. Major Karen Davis led the deep strike mission against the Vex-Thul homeworld's power grid. Her teams moved like ghosts through the alien capital, placing charges on every power plant, every communication hub, every piece of infrastructure that kept their civilization running. "Remember," she told her soldiers as they prepared to detonate the charges. "They did this to themselves. Every alien that dies today dies because they chose to murder human families." The explosions lit up the night sky of the Vex-Thul homeworld. Within hours, a civilization that had dominated this region of space for millennia was thrown back to the Dark Ages. But the humans were not finished. Captain Jake Morrison, promoted to admiral after his discovery of the Kepler 442 massacre, established the first human monitoring station in former Vex-Thul space. From this base, human forces would hunt down every surviving member of the enemy species. "No hiding," Jake told his staff officers. "No escape, no forgiveness. They wanted to exterminate us. Instead, they gave us permission to exterminate them." The galactic community watched in horror as human forces demonstrated technologies that made their previous military capabilities look like toys. Ships that could destroy planets, weapons that could target specific species, soldiers who came back from death itself to continue fighting. The Zephyrian Council sent another diplomatic protest to Earth. President Hayes's response was broadcast across the galaxy. "You had your chance to stop this when it was their crime. You chose to do nothing. Now it's our turn to choose." Other alien species began evacuating systems near human space. Trade routes were abandoned. Diplomatic missions were recalled. The galaxy was learning what humanity looked like when their children were threatened, and their friends abandoned them. The Vex-Thul Empire had ruled through fear for thousands of years. They had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved entire species. They had believed themselves to be the ultimate predators in the galaxy. They were wrong. Humanity had spent 30 years pretending to be civilized. They had accepted restrictions on their weapons and limits on their expansion. They had played by alien rules and followed alien laws. That time was over. The chains had come off, and the galaxy was about to learn what apex predators really looked like when they decided to hunt. Vex-Thul High Commander Kralthek sent his final message to the Galactic Council on a heavily encrypted channel. His voice carried the desperation of a species facing extinction. "The humans are not following any recognized rules of warfare," he said, his words translated by alien computers into dozens of languages. "They target civilians. They poison entire worlds. They show no mercy to surrendering forces. You must stop them before they destroy us all." The message included footage, from 17 different Vexthul worlds, cities burning under human bombardment, civilians fleeing from biological weapons, soldiers throwing down their weapons only to be killed anyway. But the galaxy remembered Kepler 442. The Corvan Republic, which had defended Vexthul territorial rights just months before, now refused to answer their calls for help. The Altarian Federation issued a statement calling for peace, but sent no ships to enforce it. Even the hegemony, humanity's longtime rival, remained silent. President Martha Hayes received the recordings of Kralthex's plea while reviewing casualty reports in her office. Human losses were remarkably light. After 6 months of total war, fewer than 10,000 human soldiers had died. Vexthul casualties numbered in the hundreds of millions. Her response was simple and direct. Commander Kralthex, your people, had a choice when they murdered our children. They chose genocide. Now they face the consequences of that choice. Humanity will accept nothing less than your complete surrender and permanent exile from civilized space. The message was broadcast on every alien frequency in the galaxy. Every species heard it. Every government understood it. Humanity was not interested in negotiation or mercy. They wanted total victory or total destruction. Admiral Chris Bennett stood on the bridge of the UES Judgment as his fleet prepared to assault the Vexthul stronghold system of Kethvar. 300 human warships hung in space around him, their weapons charged and ready. Below them, the last major Vexthul fleet waited in desperate defense of their remaining colonies. 250 enemy ships representing everything the aliens had left. They're trying to make this their final stand, reported Captain Lisa Grant from the tactical station. All their remaining forces are concentrated here. Chris nodded. The Vexthul had chosen their ground well. The system's asteroid field would limit human mobility and force close-range combat where alien numbers might matter. It was a good plan. Against any other enemy it might have worked. Deploy the quantum mines, Chris ordered. Full saturation pattern. The devices materialized throughout the asteroid field, invisible to enemy sensors until they activated. Each mine contained enough destructive force to vaporize a small moon. There were 10,000 of them. The Vexthul fleet died in the first 30 seconds of the battle. Chris watched the tactical display as enemy contacts vanished one by one. Ships, stations, habitats, everything the aliens had built in this system was being systematically erased from existence. Sir, we're receiving surrender signals from the remaining civilian populations, reported Lieutenant Ben Parker. Ignore them, Chris said. Continue bombardment until nothing remains. Dr. Nathan Bell's psychological warfare had evolved far beyond simple propaganda. His teams now deployed advanced neural programming devices that could rewrite Vexthul brain patterns, turning enemy soldiers against their own people. The converted aliens became perfect infiltrators, using their knowledge of Vexthul society to identify hidden bases and resistance cells. They felt no loyalty to their original species. As far as their rewired minds were concerned, they were human weapons wearing Vexthul bodies. The conversion rate is approaching 98%. Nathan reported to General Amy Carter. Any Vexthul who surrenders alive can be reprogrammed. Within 72 hours, Amy studied the reports with satisfaction. The enemy was not just losing their soldiers. They were losing them to humanity, creating an army of former aliens who knew every secret of Vexthul technology and tactics. How many converted assets do we have in their remaining territories? She asked. Over 50,000, General. There, reporting the locations of every hidden base, every refugee camp, every attempt to rebuild their military. The Vexthul were learning that surrender was not an escape from human vengeance. It was just another form of conquest. Major Karen Davis led her assault teams through the underground tunnels beneath the Vexthul government complex on their homeworld. Above them, the capital city burned under human bombardment. Below, she hunted the few remaining leaders who had authorized the Kepler 442 massacre. Her soldiers moved with deadly efficiency through passages that reeked of alien fear sense. Enhanced armor made them immune to Vexthul weapons. Neural interfaces let them share tactical data instantly. Biomodifications gave them strength and speed far beyond baseline human norms. They were what humanity became when the restrictions were lifted. Target identified, reported Sergeant Danny Martinez over the tactical network. Former Defense Minister Gex Thule is hiding in Chamber 7. He's got 6 guards. Karen's response was immediate. Eliminate the guards. The minister comes with us alive. They found Gex Thule cowering behind a barricade of furniture, his once proud uniform torn and stained with green alien blood. The creature that had ordered the deaths of human children now begged for mercy in broken English. Karen pulled off her helmet so the alien could see her human face. Minister, do you remember approving the attack on Kepler 442? Do you remember ordering your forces to target schools and hospitals? The alien's compound eyes focused on her with desperate hope. I was following orders. Military necessity. Your people were expanding too fast, threatening our territory. Karen smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Those were our children. You murdered. Now you get to see what we do to child killers. Colonel Rick Turner supervised the construction of humanity's newest military installation in what used to be the heart of the Vexthul Empire. The base was built on the ruins of their ancient capital, using stones from demolished temples and government buildings. Human engineers worked alongside converted Vexthul slaves to create a monument to human victory. Every piece of alien architecture was torn down and rebuilt according to human specifications. Every symbol of Vexthul culture was erased and replaced with reminders of Kepler 442. The native population has been relocated to the designated reservation zones, reported Commander Susan Blake. All adult males have been sterilized. All females are under constant surveillance. Population projections show complete demographic collapse within 50 years. Rick nodded as he watched human families move into homes that had once belonged to aliens. The colonists were volunteers from across human space, eager to live on worlds taken from their enemies. Their children would grow up playing in parks where Vexthul young had once learned their people's history. Those same children would attend schools built from the rubble of alien temples. The next generation of humans would know these worlds as their birthright, won through righteous vengeance against those who had dared to murder human innocence. Dr. Rachel Moore released her latest biological weapon into the Vexthul refugee camps with cold satisfaction. This virus was different from her earlier designs. It did not kill quickly. Instead, it caused a wasting disease that took months to run its course, during which the victim experienced constant, agonizing pain. "Are you certain this is necessary?" asked her assistant, Dr. Paul Rogers. Even he seemed disturbed by the level of suffering the new weapon would cause. Rachel looked at the photos of Kepler 442's school children that still covered her laboratory walls. Sweet faces that had been burned alive by aliens who thought human life was worthless. "They made this necessary when they murdered our babies," she said. "Every moment of pain they suffer now is justice for every scream those children made while they died." The virus spread through Vexthul refugee populations like wildfire. Within weeks, millions of aliens were dying in agony across dozens of worlds. Their pleas for medical aid fell on deaf ears. Human forces prevented any relief efforts from reaching the suffering populations. The galaxy watched in horror as humanity demonstrated that they could show the same mercilessness their enemies had, displayed at Kepler 442. The only difference was scale. Where the Vexthul had killed 50,000 humans, humanity was systematically exterminating an entire species. President Hayes received the final diplomatic protest from the Galactic Council. While reviewing expansion plans for the former Vexthul territories, the alien leaders begged her to show restraint, to remember the principles of civilized warfare, to consider that genocide was wrong regardless of who committed it. Her response was broadcast across the galaxy. The Vexthul chose to exterminate human children. The galaxy chose to let them do it. Now you all get to watch as we choose our response to those decisions. Remember this the next time someone suggests that human life is expendable. The message ended with footage from Kepler 442. Burning schools. Dead families. Children who had died calling for help that never came. The galaxy was learning that humanity remembered everything. They forgave nothing. And when their children were threatened, they became something far more terrible than any alien species had ever imagined possible. The surrender ceremony took place in orbit above the ruins of the Vexthal homeworld. What had once been a gleaming capital of an interstellar empire was now a smoking wasteland dotted with human military bases and refugee camps. Fleet Admiral Steve Parker stood on the bridge of the UES Dominion, watching as the last surviving Vexthal leaders approached in a damaged transport ship. Behind him, 200 human warships maintained perfect formation, their weapons powered down but ready. The aliens that shuffled onto his bridge bore little resemblance to the proud warriors who had attacked Kepler 4R2 18 months earlier. Their military uniforms were torn and dirty. Their compound eyes showed the dull acceptance of total defeat. Former High Commander Kralthex could barely stand as he approached Steve's command chair. The once mighty alien leader had lost half his body weight during the siege of his final stronghold. His voice was barely a whisper as he spoke the words that officially ended the Vexthal Empire. We surrender unconditionally to human forces. We accept all terms and conditions imposed by Earth's government. Steve looked down at the broken alien without emotion. This creature had overseen the murder of human families. His forces had hunted children through burning cities. Now he begged for the mercy he had never shown. High Commander, your species will be relocated to the reservation worlds in the Epsilon sector. Your population will be limited to 50 million individuals across all colonies. Any attempt to exceed this number will result in immediate sterilization of the excess population. Kralthex's eyes widened in horror. Before the war, over 3 billion Vexthal had lived across 47 different worlds. Steve was condemning 98% of the surviving population to death by starvation and overcrowding. You cannot mean this. We have surrendered. We accept defeat, surely some mercy. Steve's expression never changed. Your people showed no mercy to human children. You will receive exactly what you gave. The formal surrender documents were signed with shaking alien hands. Every term was designed to ensure that the Vexthal could never again threaten any other species. Their military was dissolved. Their technology was confiscated. Their worlds were distributed among human colonies. Within hours, human transport ships began moving millions of alien refugees to their new prison worlds. The journey was deliberately harsh. Many did not survive the cramped conditions and inadequate food supplies. Ambassador Helen Brooks addressed the emergency session of the Galactic Council 3 days later. The assembled alien diplomats sat in nervous silence as she outlined humanity's new position in galactic affairs. The Treaty of Rigel is permanently void, she announced. All restrictions on human military development are ended. Human expansion will proceed without limitation or oversight from this body. The Zephyrian delegate raised a tentative objection. Ambassador Brooks, surely some accommodation can be reached. The galaxy needs stability and cooperation between species. Helen's response was delivered with perfect diplomatic calm, but every alien in the chamber understood the threat beneath her words. Delegate, your people had the opportunity to provide stability when human civilians were being murdered. You chose to do nothing. The new stability will be provided by human military superiority. She activated a holographic display that showed the current deployment of human forces. The numbers were staggering. In 18 months of total war, humanity had built the largest military force in galactic history. We currently maintain active fleets in 37 star systems. Our production facilities can construct 500 new warships every month. Our weapons technology is approximately 50 years ahead of anything possessed by any other known species. The aliens stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. The humans had not just defeated the Vexthal Empire. They had become the dominant military power in the galaxy. Any species that threatens human civilians will face the same fate as the Vexthal, Helen continued. Any government that fails to prevent such threats will be considered complicit. Any organization that provides aid or comfort to humanity's enemies will be treated as enemies themselves. The new order was simple and absolute. Humanity would expand wherever they chose. Other species would accommodate human interests or face human weapons. The galaxy would be organized according to human preferences, not alien traditions. Dr. Mary Collins presented her latest research findings to the Joint Chiefs of Staff in a classified briefing that would reshape military doctrine across human space. Her teams had been analyzing every aspect of galactic society, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited if other species ever challenged humanity again. We now possess complete technological specifications for every major alien civilization, she reported. We know the location of their industrial centers, their population distributions, their military capabilities, and their economic vulnerabilities. General Amy Carter reviewed the intelligence files with satisfaction. The information represented decades of secret intelligence gathering, accelerated by the capture of alien databases during the war. How quickly could we neutralize the other major powers if they formed an alliance against us, she asked. Mary's answer was delivered with clinical precision. The Corvan Republic could be eliminated in 6 weeks. The Altarian Federation would require 3 months. The hegemony might last as long as a year, but only if they received significant external support. The implications were clear. No combination of alien powers could successfully challenge human military supremacy. The galaxy belonged to humanity now, whether other species accepted that fact or not. Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, established the first permanent human monitoring station in the former heart of the Vexthol Empire. The base was constructed on the ruins of their most sacred temple, deliberately desecrating the site where aliens had once prayed to their gods. Human families moved into homes that had belonged to Vexthol civilians just months before. Children played in parks where alien young had once learned their people's history. Schools taught human values using textbooks that described the Vexthol as a cautionary example of what happened to species that threatened humanity. The memorial to Kepler 442 was built at the center of the complex. 50,000 names were carved into black stone, surrounding an eternal flame that burned with plasma taken from the destroyed Vexthol fleet. Every human child on the colony would grow up knowing those names and understanding the price of threatening their people. How are the native populations adapting to the new administration? Jake asked his security chief during their weekly briefing. Colonel Ben Parker consulted his reports with grim satisfaction. Resistance activity has dropped to negligible levels, sir. The sterilization program is ahead of schedule. Population projections show complete demographic transition within 40 years. Jake nodded as he watched human children playing in the alien ruins outside his office window. Those kids would inherit a galaxy where human expansion faced no meaningful opposition. They would live in a universe where their safety was guaranteed by humanity's demonstrated willingness to commit genocide against those who threatened them. The Galactic Council held its final session 6 months after the Vexthol surrender. One by one, the major alien governments announced their withdrawal from the organization. There was no point in maintaining diplomatic forums when one species possessed overwhelming military superiority. The Corvan Republic signed a non-aggression pact with Earth that granted humans unlimited access to their trade routes. The Altarian Federation offered to share their advanced medical technology in exchange for human protection. Even the proud hegemony quietly agreed to territorial concessions rather than risk human military intervention. President Martha Hayes watched the dissolution of the old galactic order from her office in Geneva. Outside her window, construction crews worked on the new Ministry of Galactic Affairs, a massive complex that would coordinate human administration of their expanded territory. Ma'am, the final refugee transports have departed from the former Vexthol worlds, reported her chief of staff. All remaining population centers have been transferred to human control. Martha signed the document that officially terminated the existence of the Vexthol Empire as a political entity. The species would continue to exist in their reservation camps, but only as long as humanity found them useful for research purposes or as an example to other potential enemies. Draft a message to all human colonies, she ordered. Tell them that our children can now grow up in safety. Tell them that no alien species will ever again dare to threaten human families. The message was broadcast across human space to colonies that now stretched across half the galaxy. Worlds that had lived in fear of alien attack for generations could finally relax their defenses. Children who had grown up knowing that hostile aliens might destroy their homes at any moment could now play without fear. 10 years later, Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the rebuilt Memorial Garden of New Kepler 442, watching his own granddaughter chase butterflies among the flowers. The new colony was larger and more prosperous than the original settlement had ever been, built with resources taken from conquered alien worlds. The little girl ran up to him with a bright smile, holding a datapad displaying her school project about galactic history. The assignment was simple: explain why humanity,